We actually told the story backwards. Was that obvious to you guys? We thought we were being clever. So what we did was, typically it starts with me because that's how it starts. But they decided they wanted to end with me because I don't know why they decided that. They thought they were being clever. But I'm just going to give you some detail about September 11th, exactly what happened that day, and I'm going to try and not go too long, but I'm going to try and walk you through it. So I had a company that specialized in video game music, and we were just getting ready to release our biggest video game soundtrack of all time, which was called Halo 2. Yeah, pretty good game and a fantastic score. And so I had just flown in from Microsoft, and my plane landed early in the morning. There was a hurricane that was threatening to shut down the airports. And when we landed, the pilot's last words when we were leaving the plane were, I can't believe it, we just made it. And yeah, that didn't seem that big of a deal, because we just thought we'd have been diverted to Philadelphia or something. But later on, a week or so later, those words would resonate loudly when we went to California to re-record one of my songs, We Are Family, and it was the exact same crew that I had flown in on, because all planes were grounded for a while. Anyway, so it got to the apartment. It was still relatively early in the morning, and Nancy was awake, and I was getting ready to go to bed, and I might have even gotten into bed, and she says, "Hey, sweetheart," or honey, or some endearment, look at this. And I went into the kitchen, and we could see that it looked like a private plane had crashed into the World Trade Center, because at that time the television angle was, the television camera that was focused on the hole was so small you couldn't really tell it. You couldn't tell that it was a big commercial airliner. It really looked like it was a small plane that had gone into the World Trade Center. Well, as we were watching that, we saw another plane come flying around and crash through the other trade center. And at that point in time, sort of like everybody in the world, certainly everybody in America, could tell that it was intentional, that it wasn't an accident. At that time, I didn't know that 3 people that I knew was on the first plane that was crashed. I didn't have any idea, and as the day progressed and we started to get more and more information, people from around the world were getting different types of news feeds and different types of information as their systems were updating and our system was updating. And at some point in time, I realized that 3 people that was associated with my life and my career were on the first plane. And then some friends of mine from South Africa had just seen a film that I was in with Nelson Mandela. And they said, in this film, what was really interesting was that Nelson Mandela was dancing around to this song, We Are Family, and he was talking about the healing power that it had for him, because while he was in prison, he could tell that the sound of the girls that were singing were black girls. And he says, a song by black girls, and the white prison guards were singing that they were going to be a family together. And at that time, South Africa was still under apartheid. So to Nelson Mandela, that was like amazing. It was like incredible. And then somehow, a couple of months later, he had come to New York. He was released from prison. He came to New York, and he went to a restaurant downtown that was owned by a very famous actor named Robert De Niro, and at that time I was one of the invited guests, and he didn't know that I had done the film score to a movie called Coming to America. And so I was there, I was standing there next to Eddie Murphy, and Modibo walks in and he sees, you know, there's all these famous people, but the one he recognizes is Eddie Murphy. And he walks in and he goes, Eddie! And, you know, it's like, and you know, all these dignitaries are standing around. And meanwhile, Eddie Murphy is the man. And at some point in time, because Mandela was so gracious, he wanted to talk to everybody in the room. At some point in time, he got over to the table where me and my ex-partner were sitting, and they explained, hey, you know, this is the guy who wrote We Are Family, and this is the guy who also did the music to Coming to America. It was like amazing. Oh my God, those were two important pieces of electronic media in Africa. And then somebody whispered in his ear, he's also the guy who wrote Africa. And he says, Africa? You wrote Africa. L'Afrique, c'est chic. Because a lot of African people from French-speaking countries think that that's what the song is, Africa. So the next thing you know, like, I was the man. Like, wow, Nelson Mandela is like, cool. And so people from South Africa, it was strange, were calling our apartment saying, you need to re-release the song We Are Family so you can send out a positive message, because all we're seeing are negative messages. So here's something else. I know you guys don't know about my career, but I started out with a television show, a children's show called Sesame Street. That was my first professional real job. And so I called up my old bosses at Sesame Street and I said, you know, these people keep calling me. You know, as a composer, you don't think about your song as something else. It just doesn't make sense. But, you know, you can't say no to Nelson Mandela. It's like impossible, you know, what do you do? So somehow this idea that made no sense to me, trust me, don't think that I thought that this was some brilliant plan. It didn't make any sense to me at all. But when I called Sesame Street and I called my old friends, they said, that's a fantastic idea. And then they called the next television, the group of characters, and the next group, and the next group. Next thing you know, we were down on the street with like 100 characters, and we're all singing We Are Family. Now, we had already sung an adult version, and we did a film with a great filmmaker who's actually won an Academy Award this year, Spike Lee. So we did an adult version. And even the adult version, as happy as it was, it still didn't, we didn't feel like it would resonate with children, like the thing that we did with Sesame Street. But anyway, to try and speed the story up. So after we recorded these two versions, we still didn't know what to do with them. You know, you have to get distribution, you have to get it out to the people. So we got some kind of early partnership with Federal Express, and we sent these videos out to every